Welcome students to the course on forest inventory and yield prediction. Now before we start, let me remind you that you have studied a course on forest management where you did study about sustainable forest management in different forest systems, including clear felling system, selection system, shelter wood system, and you also studied about rotation, growing stock, and increment. Now, as an advanced course to the course on forest management, we have yield and yield regulation. You already know that yield is synonymous, volume is synonymous with growing stock. Now, how can we define yield in terms of volume or in terms of growing stock or in terms of number of stems? It's the volume or number of stems that can be removed annually or periodically, or the area over which fellings may pass annually or periodically, consistent with the attainment of objects of management. The volume or growing stock that has to be removed can be removed annually or periodically. Annually in case of clear felling system, or periodically in case of shelter wood system, or in case of selection system it may be over a period of felling cycle. Now we want to know about yield regulation. It's a term generally applied to determination of yield and prescribed means of realizing it. Now the yield is to be taken from a forest. There has to be some methods, some standards, how we have to get that yield, estimate that yield from a particular forest. Depends on the forest and the condition of the forest. Like in clear felling system there has to be a separate method, in selection system there has to be a different method, and in shelter wood system there has to be a different method. The yield regulation suggests us which method you have to use and how we have to determine that yield. And while managing a forest, we have a written prescription to manage that forest, that is called as working plan, and it's for a period of 10 years. In that working plan we can fix in advance how much yield we have to take from that forest in the form of timber or other forest produce, and that that timber that we have to take may be taken annually or periodically. Now we have different kinds of yields. One's called as intermittent yield in the form of thinnings. You already know that thinnings are is the fellings that are carried out in any forest for improvement of that forest, so as we get a better final yield. Now the other type of increment, this yield can be final yield, which is at the time of final harvesting. Now we have basis and method of yield regulation, as I already told you, depending on the forest type, how that forest is managed. There is no recognized correlation between a method of yield regulation and a silviculture system. However, there is a classification scheme which is based on some principle. On those principles we can use our best brain to decide what can be the basis or what can be the method through which we are going to take yield from a particular forest. If we want to take yield only on the basis of area, there is a method A1, annual cube by gross area, or A2, annual cube by reduced area. Now gross area is more applicable to a uniform density forest, and reduced area where the density of the whole forest is not same, like the forest which has a very high density cannot be equivalent to the area of a forest having low dense area, because the yield that you get from high density area will be always be higher from an equivalent area of a low density forest. So in high density forest the area gets reduced. That's why we call that as reduced area, annual cube by reduced area. Now if we only want to get it using volume. We want to establish our yield on the basis of volume. There's a formula called as von Mantel's formula, B1, B2. It's a Howard's modification of the von Mantel's formula. For all these modifications, von Mantel becomes the basis of for modification of different kinds of methods for estimation of yield using volume only. Now we have Howard's modification, Simmons modification, Simthe's modification, and Burma's modification. Likewise, if we want to estimate yield on the basis of area and volume both, we have C1, that is permanent periodic block method allotment, in which we have equalizing area, or it can be equalizing volume, known as Hartig's method, or equalizing area and volume. Number C2, we have revocable periodic block method, where we can have a periodic block that can be revoked. As already you know, in case of Shelterwood system, you have periodic block 1, periodic block 2, periodic block 3, and periodic block 4. You can, on the basis of after the regeneration period ends, suppose if a forest doesn't qualify for to get transferred to a different to a new periodic block, we can revoke that periodic block as per the need of that periodic block. We have single periodic block method, where we designate only one periodic block. We have floating periodic block, which is not restricted to one area. It can be spread across different areas in a single forest. Now we have C5, Jodik's stand selection management method, and there is you can also establish the yield on the basis of increment. D1 known as increment method, D2 known as Swiss method, D3 known as Bailey's check method or method D control. It is based on the principle of conservation rather than the principle of exploitation. Here, the constant in Bailey's check method, the concentration is more towards silviculture, silvicultural practices and conservation, and less towards what is to be harvested from that forest. We can also estimate yield on the basis of volume and increment of whole growing stock. Now we have for that we have formula methods for comparison of actual and normal growing stock. That's Austrian method, Hayer's method, Hundeschken method, Karl's method, Bremen's method, and E2 we have Hofnall's method. Now we can also estimate yield on the basis of dia classes, that which dia classes are to be removed in the form of yield. For that we have French method of 1883, 1894 modification of Maillard's method, Simthe's modification, and Chaturvedi's modification. Now E4 we have Hofnall's diameter class method, in E5 Brandis diameter class method, and we can also establish a yield to be taken from a forest on the basis of number of trees. That is the number of trees that we are supposed to harvest annually or periodically from a forest, which is based on the method called as volume unit method, that is E6, and Simthe's safeguarding formula E7. So these were the methods which you're going to study in the due course of time for estimation and regulation of yield. Thank you.